What is up, everybody out there in Marvel land? My name is Scott Porter, and we are here today for a game called HeroClix, but also for an incredible tomb of Marvel goodness that was really cultivated and created and just put to paper by this man, Jim Krueger. We're here to talk about Earth X and the new Marvel HeroClix set by WizKids that is under the same name. Jim, it is such a pleasure to have you, man. I do unboxings for a lot of these HeroClix sets, and we've done different storylines. We've done, Secret Wars, and we've done Chaos War, and all these big crossover events. But what makes your books really special is it's not so much a crossover event as it was a standalone story of what the world that at that time, after the Golden Age of Heroes, could become or would become. It's what I call a biblical Marvel story. It is about birth and death and morality and all these touchstones in between, and it's just one of the greatest Marvel properties ever. And
Awesome.
to have
Thank
you
you
here,
so
man,
much. Yeah.
I'd just love to pick your brain on how it all came to be, and then how it feels 20 years later to. I don't know. Have they ever made toys of Earth X?
No, there was a little send away Venom thing years ago. Venom being the daughter of Spider-Man, but that was it.
That was it. And where did you get how did you get that one toy?
I think you had to order it through
Wizard magazine.
Yep.
Okay. And that's the only toy line that
Yep,
they ever.
that's the only thing they
Oh, my
ever
goodness.
did. I mean, Dynamic Forces, they did a lot of sculptures that,
Mhm.
that Alex sculpted himself. So there are definitely statues out there. There's busts out there and stuff like that, but never a toy line.
Nothing that you could get your hands on really and play with. Or
No, that's why this is so amazing.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, before we get into the HeroClix aspect of it, let's just talk about Earth X. We've got new generation of comic book fans out there, so
Right.
I don't want to spoil everything, all of the goodness that happens in Earth X, and it is bonkers, guys. It is crazy. It's self-contained, but still has such far-reaching implications, and since has been borrowed from. I really feel like over time in the
Yeah.
Marvel universe.
They're like there's someone online has a tally where they're saying we're now at like 50 or 60 things introduced in Earth X that have been integrated in some sort of way into the Marvel universe
Yeah,
now.
into the 616, the main
Yeah.
universe. That's incredible. How did it all start, though? What was the genesis of Earth X?
It probably started with Kingdom Come. Alex and Mark Waid had done Kingdom Come, which was kind of the future-looking DC project, and Wizard Magazine, again, they approached Alex and they said, you did all like how the DC universe would look after they had aged. Can you do it for the Marvel universe? And Alex was like, oh, yeah, well, okay. And, he figured he came up with the Fat Spider-Man, the...
This guy.
Yeah.
This guy.
Um,
Dad Spider-Man.
and he came up with like a number of things. I want to say there were maybe 15 or 14 initially, maybe 20. I don't remember exactly, but he did this and he's like, I don't have a story. I don't have any idea why these characters became this way. It's just that when I approach the characters, this is kind of what made sense. And then I was working at Marvel writing advertising copy for them. I was in their marketing department at the time on staff, and he knew that he knew some like other magazine things where I would like kind of be a little more poetic and write promo and alternate histories for the characters and that kind of thing. So, and he really loved that, and he said, why don't you write a paragraph for each of these things and do it? And so
Kind of like a pitch, of
yeah, it
your
wasn't,
take on his
it wasn't
initial
even a
take.
pitch. It was more like, I looked at Fat Spider-Man and he had the idea that Earth X actually stood for like Earth X-Men. Like he was thinking about how everything was so dominated by X-Men in the Marvel universe at the time before Avengers kind of became like today the biggest property they have. And so his whole thing was like the entire Earth is mutated. Why? I don't know. How it works, I don't know, but that's the idea. So like for Fat Spider-Man, who in his initial sketch did not have the thing that says Peter Parker Spider-Man on it. It was just like a Spider-Man suit that couldn't fit over his belly.
Right.
In that case, I just started thinking about how in a world where everyone has powers, he doesn't feel great responsibility. And then Alex was like, oh, and it got more and more exciting as I began to not just try to give an explanation of what the character was, but I would write some sort of sense of tragedy or poignancy even in that little paragraph. And then that all went up to Marvel president Joe Calamari, and he like immediately, even though it started as just an article that would be in Wizard, he immediately said, "Oh no, this is a real project."
That's awesome, man. It's so cool to, and I spoke earlier about there's a brand new generation of comic book readers really now. I mean, it's been 20 years since this year is the 20th anniversary, right?
Yeah. It's this year or next.
This new age of comic book readers don't even know what Wizard Magazine is anymore.
Right,
like Wizard Magazine was a magazine that you would go back and you would, in the back of it would tell you how much your comics were worth if you wanted to sell them again. Like the rare comics, fetched a lot more money. It was like a pricing guide initially for comic books, and then became a bit of like a pop culture magazine.
Yeah, they had great articles and all kinds of things.
But the crazy thing about Alex is, kind of spitballing these characters after they asked him was that it like went to a second printing and a third printing, and that issue in itself is actually worth money now, because that was like
amazing.
The very beginning, this very spark, the first sparks of like what these characters would become. And then of course you come in and you fill out and you create all of these official backstories. And it's just amazing that even back then, from a small little thing, that would be like in today, somebody pitching something on social media or just like spitballing on social media, and all of a sudden Marvel going, we want that to be a comic. That's basically how Earth X came about 20 years. That is insane to me. And, for everybody in the audience who doesn't know exactly what the beginning of Earth X is, it basically is the fourth evolution of humanity. It's where you find out that everybody's always been capable of superpowers, but only some of them in the Golden Age of Heroes had them manifest. Right.
The idea was that there was a seed implanted in mankind and passed from generation to generation, going way back to like Jack Kirby's Eternals, right? Which means way back to like the beginning of the time when the Celestials first come down, and in so many people these seeds were dormant, waiting to be activated or mutated or whatever, and so the story begins after they've all been mutated and there really are no humans on Earth anymore.
Yeah. So there's all these humans, and, one of them gets bit by a radioactive spider. Spider-Man gets his powers. The same thing with Captain America. He takes the serum. He gets his powers. It unlocks that seed. And everybody just thinks, oh, well, those guys are superheroes. I'll never be one. And then all of a sudden, this one big event happens. Every human has superpowers, except for Tony Stark.
Except for Tony,
I thought was so interesting. Tony Stark is unlike a Tony Stark we've ever seen before. He's like holed himself up in like a bunker where he can't be touched by whatever got everybody else their superpowers, and he just doesn't want to go out to the outside world. He doesn't want that to happen to him, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, totally.
So it's just really cool. It's a great take on all these heroes that everyone out there, you guys love so much. Iron Man and Thor. Now, 20 years ago, you had a female Thor in Earth X.
Right, we did.
And now we have Jane Foster Thor. So
yeah.
That's one of that tally of 50 or 60.
Right. Well, maybe not, because I think there had been a what if before then. And I know there was a what if before then in which it's like, what if Jane Foster had become Thor? But
right.
The female Thor was actually Thor himself, having been cursed by Odin to experience life as a woman because Loki lied to Odin and said, "Oh, your son is womanizing all the Earth people," and blah 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 blah.
Man, it's so interesting. You guys go into deities and like Asgardians and Zeus and Olympus and all that, and all of the old gods from the old world when humanity was, in the various stages of evolution and why they exist and who they are. You guys go into that, explaining who those gods are and why or how they draw their power. And it's a lot like they are what they are because of what humanity believes them to be. So Loki is a trickster god and evil because humanity believed him to be evil. So he said, okay, well, if that's what they believe, then I will be that thing. And then you flip it on its head. Loki becomes like a really big hero in this whole story.
Yeah, in fact, this is, again, that's another one of the 50. Loki is heroic.
Yeah, so for everybody out there, Earth X, I cannot and we will not be able to get to all these little different things, but it goes into the X-Men, it goes into all these things you had, and for me was kind of new, kind of, we'd seen it. Alan Moore had done it some, and other like amazing creators and stuff. But you have at the back of each issue these walls of text that are a conversation between X-51, who was Machine Man, and has all that stuff stripped back by the Watcher, and Uatu, who the Watcher, if everybody out there knows the Watcher, he's this like giant baby-looking alien that watches the human race. You guys really go into why he's watching. Right. He goes blind. He needs Machine Man, so the two of them are working together. And then you find out the history of the world through these walls of text in the back of the issues. And you touch on so much. How did you go from one paragraph apiece to 14 issues plus like mini novels in the back of each of these issues, and like fill out, like how much time did that take? How did you come up with it? Like,
you know what, it was like there was this one idea, and it's a big spoiler for the book, so maybe I won't say it, but I remember Alex,
cover your ears, fast forward 10 seconds.
I know that Alex was like, why, we talked about why Earth was mutated, who caused the mutation, what it was, and that kind of thing. But then he was like, I just don't know, is it, we had various possibilities. And I remember calling him up one night and leaving, I want to say, an hour long, like I kept on calling him, leaving messages on his voicemail. And when it would click, I would call back. And it was just this idea of that answers everything from, what are the Celestials really doing on Earth? What is the Watcher watching for? What is the balance that Galactus keeps? Why does he destroy worlds? Why are there even heroes on Earth? Why has there been so much manipulation by the Celestials of people groups? How were the Deviants a failed experiment at the beginning, which led to the Eternals, which, led to other things? How do the Kree get involved? It was really just like this, like I just threw up on Alex's machine. But I was so excited because at the center of it, there was just this one idea. And because of that one idea, like it was information that was missing in all the origins we have ever read and everything we understood about the characters. So part of how Earth X starts is pages, like the first 4 pages of each issue looks at one of the origins of the characters and brings us kind of up to date from the very beginning of who the character was to kind of where they are or where they were before the mutation. Like It's just like, here's the history of the character, but because of this new knowledge and because it's a discussion between Uatu and X-51, it's kind of described in a way where X-51 is like, look, I was Machine Man. I fought next to Captain America. I fought, these are heroes. They're amazing. And Uatu is like, everything's biological. Everything's like, they're Captain America is morally equivalent to the Red Skull because there are no morals. It's just life. And it's birth and death and that kind of thing. So you get this debate over even the heroes in the midst of it while new information is given. And the main story then progresses because it's not a history book.
Yeah, but it's interesting because there is so much history that you guys create for each of these characters, and it's really cool how Uatu's been blinded for a certain amount of time, but he doesn't know what blinded him. Whatever did it snuck up on him. Right. And now
even that is like he missed, like there was that moment where the Watcher wasn't watching.
Yeah. And so there's this amount of time that X-51 is trying to fill in for Uatu. Uatu doesn't realize. So even with all this history, even with all of these massive life questions that you guys are trying to answer within the confines of Earth X, it really is 2 mysteries. Who did this to the Watcher, and what triggered all of humanity? Because now it obviously has the Watcher worried that all of humanity has evolved this 4th time, because it's not on whatever clock he was kind of
it's not quite time yet.
Yeah, and so he really has this necessity to have X-51. He wants to strip back humanity of all of its morals, of all of its platitudes, of all of its things, and just say they're animals. It doesn't matter. It's their instinct. It's their nature to build people up, to break them down. It's just the way that they work. But then you've got these amazing mystery stories going over the top of it. Now, I'm glad you brought up the first 4 pages of each issue.
Right.
these little figures here in front of us for everybody watching at home are HeroClix, and the reason I even got to do this is because HeroClix, this game, chose Earth X as its next kind of set to play with. I like to call it superhero chess. It's kind of like Risk meets chess meets superheroes. So instead of moving in the shape of an L, Dad Spider-Man can leap over other characters because he's Spider-Man. He can swing through the town. And you play this game on a 3-foot by 2-foot map, and you have little squares that they move around in, and they attack each other. And it's a dice game. It's not as complicated as I'm making it sound, but because they choose different properties, I get to have really cool moments like this where I'm talking to you. In the beginning of each issue, you have like X-51, the first 4 pages of Earth X 0, or you told me it's actually Earth X O.
Right. As an O for origin.
That's which as a comic book fan, I'm like, I never got it.
Oh, no, but it's not like we even look back at that and we're like, oh yeah. that was probably not the best idea. It was kind of like, it looks so close to 0.
No, but it's now clear to me that it has been stated, and that now I feel like I'm on the inside of a little club that has knows the inside joke. The Hulk one was really, really cool to me. The version of the Hulk where Bruce Banner is like a kid and this unthinking, there's a spot throughout the story where they have to go into the realm of death and they have to send something without a soul, and Banner goes, well, the Hulk can do it. The Hulk doesn't have a soul. The Hulk's soul is me, and almost like an automaton, the Hulk
and Banner could look through the Hulk's eyes.
And then X-51 has his first 4 pages of origin, but we did in like issue 2, I think it's you see Spider-Man for the first time, and you see Luke Cage for the first time. You just kind of get your first look at New York, kind of like the origin of New York within your story in Earth X. And we pulled Spider-Dad. You've talked about him a couple of times. I'm going to put him up here so everybody could see exactly what a HeroClix figure looks like. And you do have all that lettering on him.
Well, this is somewhat of a spoiler. There's a point where in the midst, like, it starts out and he's not even a hero anymore. He's sad and he's broken down, and his daughter is now Venom.
Right.
And even though she seems like she's in control of the symbiote, he's convinced that it's just tricking her and it can't be controlled. So he's trying to save her from this thing that's actually empowered her.
Yeah.
And he's disenfranchised. But at some point, because this is that kind of story, he's going to have to put on the costume again. But everyone knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Luke Cage walks up to him on the street and is like, Parker. And Luke Cage here, I'll show you guys what Luke Cage looks like in Earth X, at least in the figure here. He's like the police sergeant in New York. Like, he's got his own police force. And again, everybody has superpowers, so he's trying to recruit Spider-Man at the very beginning to get him to join the police and say, look, great power comes great responsibility. This is the responsibility. Be a policeman. Like, come help me out. And Parker doesn't want anything to do with it. But, you're Spider-Man. And the cool thing about HeroClix is, we do put as much of the character into the Clix figure as we can, to the the way that they operate on the map, the way that they play. So a lot of Spider-Men have super senses, which allows you to avoid attacks, to be like Spidey sense. He still has that, but as far as the offensive capabilities, he's not as astute and he's not as good at that. But he becomes more of a support character because of your version of Spider-Man. I call him Spider-Dad. Spider-Dad is like more of a support character. He's more, in a way, caring, as you were talking about, towards Venom. And we did pull Venom today as well, which is very cool. But my whole point of bringing up Spider-Man and the Hulk is you got to sit here and you got to see me kind of open all of these characters that you could play with. But we didn't get some of the big guns. Is there any characters that we didn't pull that you were really hoping to see?
Oh, well, I'm definitely hoping to see X-51. And when Loki first shows up, Loki looks amazing. Like, how Alex designed him and John Paul Leon drew him, it was just amazing.
It's like I don't know how to explain it, but if you see in the pages of the book, it's almost like he's like Ent Loki. I don't know if anybody's a Lord of the Rings fan out there, but he's almost like nature Loki. He's like the color blocking on him. He's like very dark greens and browns, and he looks like this ancient like tree of a version of Loki almost. I don't know how to explain it, but like it was so striking when he first comes on the page, and and then the rapport starts between Thor and Loki, and you realize very quickly this is Thor and Loki.
Right.
To a T. The dialogue that you guys had between those two characters works so well. Yeah, I can tell you Loki is definitely in the set.
Oh, cool.
X-51 is definitely in the set.
Definitely want to see Captain America.
Yeah. He is. He's in HeroClix we have something called title character. And the title character gets extra bonuses and extra things. And since, a great portion of Earth X is Captain America's story as well.
Oh yeah.
I think they gave title character to Captain America, so that's going to be pretty cool too.
In fact, I would say like in Earth X is probably Captain America, Reed Richards, and Machine Man.
Yeah.
X-51. It's really those three, and then you have like Daredevil, who's giant in it. Well,
yeah. Oh,
the new Daredevil, our version of Daredevil.
Yeah, and Daredevil, you really get into exactly who Daredevil is. Kind of later on down the line, because it's not Matt Murdock, right? And
no, it's not Matt Murdock. In fact, one of my great sadnesses, other than getting to do an origin of him and stuff like that later on in the series, is I still haven't gotten to write Daredevil.
Oh, I guess
of all the characters, in the Marvel Universe, I love that character so much.
Right. There was a character that you guys, the Skull.
Yeah.
He's kind of like the false villain of the story, I think, for like a great portion of it. I've already mentioned that it's a bit of a mystery, and but the Skull, was he fun to write?
He was so much fun to write.
I call him like I don't know if you watch Game of Thrones, but I call him the Joffrey of the Earth X story. Like you can't wait to see this guy.
He was so fun to write. He, there was literally every insult I wanted to make about, even towards the heroes or anything like that. I think. And this is, I got to do so much, and this is where editors were really helpful in the midst of it, because I think initially he looks at the A on Cap's head and goes, is the A for ass? And the editor was like, no, that's not, no, we can't have that in the book.
Right.
And so I had the Skull then write, is the A for Alice? Where he's just kind of picking on Cap, and I was like, oh, that's even better.
Yeah.
Like
the way that the Skull operates in the books, and this is what is very cool about HeroClix. The Skull, as he gained his powers, Beckley, right? What's his Benjamin? What's his name?
Oh, well, he's just pretty much the Skull through Earth X, and then we define him later. But there's a big mystery as to who he really is.
Right.
So,
but you lay the seeds very early on that when he gets his powers, all the other telepaths in the Marvel Universe, because of that lashback, all end.
Right.
There's no Professor Xavier, no Jean Grey, no other telepaths that we really know. So, and then you kind of come to find out that he has this amazing, immense mind control power, and he's got this army with him.
Yeah.
And in this army are some heroes that we love, some villains that we love. And he is slowly marching across the country towards another villain that you have in the story, the President Osborn, as the Green Goblin, who we also have. But the cool thing about HeroClix is you wrote this character who can do these immense things in the books, and then WizKids says, all right, we're going to make a toy, but not only a toy, we're going to make a figure that you use in a tabletop game. But it's not like Monopoly. We're going to go even more in depth. He has the ability to take control of any of these other figures. And it's not only that he can just take control of them briefly. He can take control of them from anywhere on the map, basically.
Oh, that's
the
really
power
cool.
that they gave him. So how does it feel to know that your ideas are being translated into a game like this? And how does that go about? Does WizKids call you and be like, hey, we have a couple of questions for you, or do you just kind of roll?
It wasn't. I found out about it as it was being promoted, like the whole HeroClix thing, and I contacted HeroClix and I was like, hey, if you need any help or you have any questions about characters and powers, just let me know.
That's awesome, man.
And then they sent me to you.
They were like, "Hey, give Scott a call." It's.
I should say, like, for
people
who are really into like the details and stuff like that, the Skull character was based on a real person, but I won't say who that is. But ironically, because there was certainly some inspiration, ironically, the ID his identity, who he really was, is he's the son of a character created for the Marvel Universe by Bill Mumy from Lost in Space.
Oh, wow.
So that's how he.
Right.
I just love what Bill Mumy did with that character.
Yeah.
Which I won't say for those who want to seek it out, but
Yeah,
ultimately,
mute your thing for 5 seconds. Go ahead.
he created Comet Man.
Yeah.
Like I think that was in late '80s or something like that, or early '90s, and I just wanted to touch on that character.
That's such a deep cut. Comet Man is such a deep cut. You know, for
yeah,
I actually don't mind that one being out there because I feel like it'll spur this other generation of readers to go back and find out who that is.
And that was kind of the goal of the series. Like, we realized right away that there were so many MacGuffins, there were so many unsolved mysteries in the Marvel Universe, and even solving those mysteries didn't make the Marvel Universe any less cool or great. It was just like, oh, that's what that meant. So that's why there's some history in the book, because it was like going back through everything and trying to be as true as possible to each character and each voice.
Well, man, thank you so much for coming. I hope that you are interested in playing. I hope people out there got a little insight as to what HeroClix is. It is, like I said, it's like chess with superheroes with a little bit of risk
really
thrown
cool.
in. There's dice involved, and there's a big 2 foot by 3 foot map that these guys move around on, and you pick your team of your favorite characters, or you pick your team that you think is going to do the best on the map. And for me, you guys created this version of the Hydra. The Hydra is very cool, and Captain America is the fulcrum of a lot of these villains. It feels like a man out of time has always been out of time, and now with everybody getting powers, he's even further out of time. No purpose, almost purposeless. The Avengers have all died at this point in the very beginning of the book, and Captain America is really at a loss. And the skull is one thing that makes him really focus again. He sees the skull here and just focuses on it. It's like it's a new Red Skull. It's a new Hitler. I have to go after him. This is what I'm meant to do. But along the way, all of his friends have just seen a different version of this world where they're like, this is the end times. We're coming to the end, and some of them give up, and then the Hydra accepts them into itself. And so we have...
So there's something like really sickly sweet about that.
Yeah. And we have, you've got Sam Wilson, you've got Sharon Carter, and a lot of the people that are a part of the Hydra now, are close friends of Cap's.
Did they do a Hydra She-Hulk? Because that's visually something that's just amazing.
You know what? I'm not sure. It might be in the set. I know Madam Hydra is in the set, who is yeah.
Well, I think even She-Hulk's the new Madam Hydra, so that's really cool.
She's got all of these massive tentacles. But again, that's another mystery in the book. Hulk, this soulless version of Hulk that is tethered to Banner, who is a young boy.
Right.
He goes into the realm of death, and he sees She-Hulk in the realm of death, and he's like, "Why is She-Hulk in the realm of death? It's a part of Hydra." So there's all these little tendrils that you guys put out there. But the thing I was bringing up about the Hydra is in the game, they move around as a unit. Falcon can pick them all up and carry them all around together.
Oh,
and
that's
so
cool.
if you choose to play the Hydra, you can just pick the Hydra from Earth X to be what you're playing as that day.
Oh, that's cool.
So there's a role-playing element to it all as well.
And like even in the comic, you never even had a point where like the Skull's army goes up against an army of Hydras. Like you never had that even in the book.
Yeah.
But that's cool too.
But it can exist. What happens when they all start to turn against each other. Your impact to me on Marvel is so far-reaching, and it was at such an important time. You're coming out of the 90s and the early 2000s, and the big boom of the comic book, revolution in the 90s, where everything was going for, so much money, and all of these prospectors were coming in and buying comic book issues. And then comic books really had to kind of redirect itself once again in the early 2000s, and Earth X was right there at the middle of it all. How do you feel about, I think it's very important in the Marvel universe, but, how do you feel now, almost 20 years later, knowing that it's getting its just dues again?
No, I love it so much. And even, all writers talk about this idea that you write something and then you look back on it and you just see all the mistakes and you see this. I look back on Earth X and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I just lucked into it. Like the ideas just kind of lucked out. Like it was just like, oh, that's so true to that character, or that's so true to that character. Like some of the characters, like when I did the origin to both Iron Man and Hulk, Tony Stark and the Hulk, I didn't even really love those characters growing up until I got to write them. And kind of the writing forced me to look at their histories, forced me to look at, you know, who they were, and if things went bad, what their destiny would be. And that was fun. Like then all of a sudden I was like, oh no, this is such a quality important character. Like the Hulk, for example, I never even realized why kids like the Hulk until I wrote him.
That's awesome.
Like, you know, I mean, you got a little kid and like what do we tell little kids over and over? Don't be angry at your sister, don't control yourself, all this sort of thing. And kids like the Hulk because the Hulk does heroism and anger. And so the Hulk ultimately tells kids that it's okay to be angry. Sometimes angry is the right thing.
Right.
And so that's cool.
Yeah, that is awesome. That's, you know, in rereading characters as an adult, I get a different view of them too. Cyclops is really cool in the book. Cyclops is a guy that a lot of people love to hate. He's your typical,
I love Cyclops. So
you know, but for a lot of people, you know, he's stick up the rear and, you know, very straight.
They've made him bad in the last couple of years.
But
so.
For me, I voiced him once in a cartoon.
Oh,
when
cool.
I voiced him, I went back and I studied and I said, you know what? Like, there's almost no hero in the entire Marvel universe that has suffered as much loss as him. And the fact that he can still all keep it together is really testament to his true character. So, you know, for me, I fell in love with Cyclops reading him again as an adult as opposed to reading him as a kid. I always loved Havoc as a kid.
Right.
But as an adult, I really, you know, get in touch with Cyclops. And in the book, you know, he says it, and this is part of a theme of Earth X as well. He goes, well, this isn't where I expected to be, but it's happening all over again. Yeah. And there's almost these cycles, these circles that some of the heroes get caught into. You know, the Daredevil that you guys created comes from a circus. There's a bunch of mutants who are even further, you know, mutants than the normal humans that have powers, and they're looking for a place. And where else do they go except to Greystone Manor and go, you know, to see Cyclops and be taught by him. And that's a really cool thing. And
I don't even know if we ever reveal who Daredevil is. We have lots of people guess.
Yeah.
You know, we have lots of people guess. I know Ben Grimm is, like, the Thing is convinced that it's Wade Wilson.
Yeah.
But we never say for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so cool, and, you know, 20 years later, though, to see them finally in a way that kids can now actually play with them, or adults who loved Earth X can now sit down and play a game with the characters that you created.
Oh, it's so cool. I love that there's a King Britain so much. Like, I've always loved Captain Britain.
Yeah.
And so part of what made writing the series really fun was just the chance to even write obscure characters that never get love.
Yeah.
Or rarely get love.
Yeah, we'll take a look at him real quick just for everybody out there. But, yeah, King Britain is very cool, too. He's got his Union Jack army. And you guys touch on this thing that when everybody gets powers, they kind of look to the people that have had power for so long to lead them.
Yeah.
So they don't know how to, you know, when you have a major life change like that, how do you adjust? And that's, you know, Osborn steps into power, King Britain steps into power. Black Panther's already in power in Wakanda, but it's just natural for everyone else to go.
But you have heroes in Russia set up. You have, like, all the major continents and nations do have their leadership. And part of even answering that question was just like, what do the heroes do when their day-to-day is no longer saving people? What do they have to become? How do they have to change with the world? Right. And that's why it's sad for Peter Parker, because he doesn't know how to change with it. Right.
The last figure I just want to kind of show off before we sign off here is Namor. You know, I'm sure there's been a statue of Namor before, right?
I'm sure.
He gets cursed by Franklin Richards after he murders the Human Torch, which is something that really shatters Franklin. And Franklin basically uses his powers and curses him that whenever he is not in the water, he's burning.
Yeah.
And the imagery of it in itself, did it just start with an image of Namor on fire and then spun out of that? Or was that...
Yeah. I mean, that was also one of those original sketches that Alex had. And I think, if I remember correctly, Alex had an idea that somehow Namor had been cursed, but there was this there was also just the classic idea of just saying, let's have a character who's water and fire.
Yeah.
You know, who's both. But Namor's always been cursed. I love that character so much.
Well, the depth that you guys go into, and again, those conversations between Uatu and X-51 really get into his history. There's been so many patches of amnesia for Namor.
Right.
There's been a lot of times ever since he was created that he's forgotten who he was.
No.
He's forgotten that he was the king of something. He's forgotten friends. He doesn't recognize people. And you guys really fill in the gaps with all that. Again, connective tissue that you were able to come up with, and it makes just so much sense. It fills in so many gaps. And as somebody who has read Marvel for so long, like me, it was just so cool to take that journey down that road and go, oh, some of these things have never been answered, but now they make so much sense.
Well, we wanted it to be like not only an introduction to the world for some, but even a reward for people who've been reading for a long time. Like, there are plenty of things that we don't even explain along the way. Like, as in the first couple pages, as X-51 is walking along the moon, he asks, you know, he's walking through the remains of the civilization on the moon, and he's wondering, you know, who lived here, what was here, and all that sort of thing. And you see some skeletal bones, and like even really small, like childlike bones next to it, and that's of course Devil Dinosaur.
Right.
You know, the remains of Devil Dinosaur. Or X-51 even says, was there love here as we're going by the remains of that gun that shot down Jean Grey Phoenix in Uncanny 137, without drawing attention to it.
Right.
You know, it was just like,
oh, I need to go take another look at it.
So that
man.
as people go through, there are things that help them if they're big fans, you know,
right,
of the Marvel Universe, you know.
That's awesome, man.
Things to check out. And
need to go back and look for some of those Easter eggs again, because I do have this bad boy. Y'all need to get this. This is the kind of the epic compendium, and this is only 2 of the 3 because Earth X is
right. This is Earth X, the sequel Universe X, and then the next book or the next omnibus will be all of Paradise X, and then a bunch of other stuff, including the never ever reprinted Nighthawk limited series that I wrote, because Nighthawk gets these eyes that allow him to see the future, and then he becomes one of the narrators in Universe X,
right,
as they're now looking for the future and stuff like that. So
Kyle Richmond,
I'm so glad that that's being put in there.
You know, X-51 talks about him in Earth X about how, you know, he must be driven mad by you know, seeing more than even they're seeing. They're seeing current. They can't see into the future, and what he sees is even different. Man, I got to tell you, such cool things, and you guys had so many figures that there's no way they could put everything into this set. I mean, you're talking, you know, the Avengers, Iron Man and his Iron Avengers, who actually make their way into the set.
So cool.
You've got the Fantastic Four, or half of the Fantastic Four after the events that happened very early in Earth X. All of the villains that are created, all of the depth. I mean, you've got Celestials. If you see behind us, you know, they've made a HeroClix of Galactus before.
Right.
Galactus plays a part in Earth X. You know, I'd love to see a version of that.
Yeah, or all those Celestials. I could never even imagine that.
We do have a Celestial in HeroClix form. I should have brought him today and put him up behind us, but you know, you guys touched all of these different realms. I hope that HeroClix comes back around and does another version of this, but it's got to be cool to.
Oh, it's really special. It's really like.
I'll have to teach you the game,
please.
So you can come.
I would love that.
Come and play this out. We could make news stories with all of these guys. I mean, the Enforcers of all things are in it. Like these ancient, you know, forgotten about super teams. You know, the Enforcers are President Goblin's bodyguards.
Did they do a Marshall Muldoon?
I don't know. They did not. Not of this. not.
I just grabbed that from Kirby's like I grew up with Kirby's 70s Marvel stuff. Like he did Black Panther and Captain America and Machine Man and Devil Dinosaur and all that stuff. So I tried where I could to sneak in all those kind of Kirby creations.
Yeah.
And so that character was a point in which Kirby kind of, because Kirby was so smart, he would he would approach things so like with such concepts, so that like even when they introduced Muldoon into the 70s stuff, he was like, okay, let's have Captain America team up with John Wayne.
That's awesome. Well, you know what? I have to talk to WizKids because they do. If you win like the big tournament, like the World Championships, you get to pick the character that you want to be made into Clix form.
Oh, cool.
So some like less heralded or less known heroes can make it into a HeroClix set because somebody won and chose that character.
Oh,
so
crazy.
we'll have to start a campaign to get Muldoon
I love that.
made. That would be amazing. Well, everybody out there, I hope you enjoyed this chat, this look inside Earth X, and kind of the marriage of what WizKids does best, taking just stories that we know and we love and translating them into a game that we can love and play. Go out, pick this bad boy up, find the Paradise X as well, and trust me, spend a night just reading Earth X and just dip your toes into the water. You will not be disappointed. And everybody out there, if you're interested in picking up a game that takes the characters that we know and love and makes them playable, then HeroClix is for you. I'll spend some time after we get done. I'll teach you the game, and we'll have a match or two, and I'll make sure that we get you a set of all these figures, man.
So excited. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
And everybody out there in Marvel Land, thank you for watching. Excelsior. And in HeroClix fans out there, until I see you next time, may all your rolls be critical hits.